I gotta tell you, man, I'm playing these video games. I'm playing a lot of Stardew Valley.
Love it.
I'm watching some movies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fine. It's fun.
Always.
But Value Sesh, when I pop a little rabbit hole gummy, oh my God, dude.
I'm talking total relaxation, too.
Total relaxation.
When I game, when I'm watching something relaxing, it's a comfortable, like, relaxing. It's not even, I don't even know the best way to describe it without sounding like.
It's like jumping into a swimming pool on a hot summer day.
It is refreshing. Yeah.
And like you just got done doing yard work.
Ooh,
and you
I
go
know
straight
that.
from the lawnmower and just jump into that pool and all that dirt and everything. You just, valuesash.com. Use code SCAREDY. It's so good. Trust.
You know, I got a problem, Tone.
What's that problem?
I have some people in my life I need to buy a gift for, and they're into like spooky, cool, weird stuff, but it's like New Year's. Who even has this stuff? It's New Year's. Like, do I have to wait like 8 months or what am I going to do?
You don't have to wait 8 months at all. You can go right now to Horror Monger Collectibles.
What?
A brand new store in Mesa.
Whoa. What do they do?
Man, they just sell anything and everything spooky and horror.
Wow.
They're right off Stapley in Mesa, Arizona. You go to horrormonger.com, see what they got, check them out.
Everything.
If you need horror movie stuff, man, they're your horror movie hookup.
All year round.
Right here on the east side.
Huh. Yeah. I think I'll go check them out.
They're the best horror store on the east side of this whole valley.
Horror Monger, come see us. We're in Mesa, you sluts. Sorry.
Welcome to Scaredycast, presented by Horror Monger Collectibles. Whoa!
Horror Monger Collectibles. Yeah. Nice.
Hey, what the heck happened to Kelsey over there?
Wait a minute. That was a great laugh. There's no way Kelsey made that.
No way.
That's because we don't have Kelsey this week.
Oh, no.
What's a Kelsey?
Kelsey is
God,
she's our dog.
Where do we begin?
No, she's the face of Scaredycast.
Yeah,
we are
you
just
can
the
say that.
brains and the brawn.
Yeah.
She's the girl.
She's the girl.
We're just two nerds and
We're the
a
dorks.
pretty girl, and that's what we do.
It's the beauties and the beast.
yeah. But we're not here to talk about
We're
Kelsey.
here to talk about Kelsey.
Because guess who we have?
Who?
Someone way more interesting. We have Steve.
Steve, tell us
Steve,
about
what is
you,
your last
Steve.
name?
My name is Steve Ringgenberg. I'm a professional writer and editor. I've been in the biz since summer of 1980, after I moved to New York City. I sold my first short story, and then I started selling scripts to DC Comics. I did like maybe half a dozen scripts for, House of Mystery and like their mystery titles, none of which they ever used, which is probably good because they won't be around to haunt me.
He shows up here with a list, and this is not even a complete list, but like, holy cow. Did you see all these interviews? Like, you have an insane amount of work. Now, I got to preface this.
Yeah.
My girlfriend, Kate, threw a Halloween party and at our house, and she invited Steve, and she said, you got to meet this guy. He's super interesting, and I know you guys can get talking about all kinds of stuff. I said, okay, cool. So we briefly met at the party. A couple weeks later, here we are. We're like, you know what? And she says, I still don't know much about you other than you're extremely interesting, and that Kate says you're cool. And then she says, you know what? How about you have him on? And I said, I don't want to know anymore. I said, I want to know. I want it all to be a surprise. So I had no idea. You're working on like DC stuff? Like you're... What happened?
Just ignore me.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Like, you have heavy metal. Like, everyone's heard of that.
Yeah, I did the dossier column for them for like 12 years.
I mean, the two main things that jump out that people who are into Marvel but they're not reading the comics is Moon Knight and What If, because those are, especially What If. I think What If just finished the second season on Disney Plus.
I wrote with my buddy Matt Jorgensen, who drew the issue. We were in, like, I think it was What If number 14. It's like 12 or 14. And the premise was, what if Captain Marvel hadn't died? You guys are familiar with that graphic novel that Starlin did, right?
Nope.
The Death of Captain Marvel? Well, that was our jumping off place. Instead of having Captain Marvel die, he gets saved, but what happens is the method by which they save his life from the cancer makes Captain Marvel a super spreader of a nasty virus that can jump species. Whoa. So he's like a plague carrier, and the Silver Surfer has to hunt him down and stop him.
Wow!
And at the end of the story, Captain Marvel is still alive, and he goes into this alternate dimension with a female friend, to stay there until they can figure out a cure for the whatever's killing everybody. And along the way, like the Thing from Fantastic Four gets it, and he dies.
Oh
and the Supreme Intelligence from the Kree Empire gets it, and it was fun because we had basically every character just about in the Marvel universe. I mean, Doctor Strange is in it, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers.
Wow.
And, it was a real bitch for Matt because he had to draw all these different characters. But it was fun writing dialogue for him. And that's probably my proudest achievement at Marvel. I didn't do all that much work for him. Really, I've worked for a lot of different people, but I'm kind of a fringy. I was never that into superhero comics. When I started writing for comics in like 1980, I was coming off of the late 70s when they had things like Tomb of Dracula and people like Bernie Wrightson and Mike Kaluta, working on like House of Mystery and House of Secrets. That's the kind of stuff I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it was being superseded by the X-Men, right, with Byrne and Claremont, and Wolfman and Perez on the Teen Titans. And that's what all the fanboys were excited about. So I couldn't get a lot of the kind of work I really wanted to do. I mean, I'm not, opposed to superheroes, but, I don't think that's the most interesting aspect of the medium. I'm an EC Comics fan. I love horror, I love science fiction, war comics, westerns. And, back in the day, superheroes were not the dominant genre. In fact, superheroes were kind of like in the toilet after World War II, and comic book companies were doing everything: romance comics, Archie and Jughead, horror.
What was, at the time, if you were into comics at all, or superheroes whatsoever, you were a nerd. You were made fun of, you were bullied, all that stuff. It was not cool at all to like Marvel or anything. And my first comic book I ever picked up was at a friend's house. They had a Predator one and a Jurassic Park comic. And I had no idea. I only thought comics were superheroes. And I was never into that. I was like, it's okay. It's cool.
I had my friends at my school, but then I had some friends, they were like the kids of the parents who worked at my parents' video store.
Yeah.
So I had a separate group of friends that I kept secret because they were the ones that were into what I was into, which was like comics and D&D and like all that super nerdy shit. So when I was with my friends at school, I was like, yeah, dude, basketball, football, cool stuff. I was like, I want to go play D&D with my friends.
And isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah, you had to keep it super
You
secret.
were literally beat up for being a nerd.
It was even, that's how wrestling was too for a while until the Attitude Era of wrestling started. That's when it became cool to like wrestling. Yeah. But if you liked wrestling before like Stone Cold and all those guys, you were a nerd.
Well, it's so weird because now I don't follow comics and stuff that much.
Now it's almost the opposite.
I'm the weird one because I don't know Avengers lore. I don't know everything. And so it's like, what? You haven't seen all the Marvel movies? Have you even lived in the last 20 years? And I'm like, it's not really my thing.
I'm still a comics fan, but I don't follow most contemporary comics. I was always an artist collector. I was never that into the characters. I mean, sure, certain characters like, Batman or Captain America, I always loved. But I mean, I was collecting comics because I wanted to get comics by Al Williamson and Wally Wood and Frank Frazetta, and then also other artists that weren't necessarily superhero artists like Joe Kubert, who did Sergeant Rock for all those years. But he also had a really cool run on Hawkman. Just a handful of issues. It was in Brave and the Bold. He teamed up with Gardner Fox, who'd been writing, Hawkman back in the 40s. And they did like 6 issues with Kubert and Gardner Fox. And for my money, that's some of the finest superhero comics ever. Also, I'm a big fan of the Jack Kirby and Stan Lee issues of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Basically like the first 100 issues.
So you were saying you weren't necessarily a fan of like the characters. You were more so a fan of artists. I know from one of my favorite movies, Creepshow, there is that, and I've never seen these, and I don't know if they exist anymore or if they've existed in the last 30 years, but those like horror comics where, you know how Creepshow is like the kid is reading the horror comic and there's like the 5 stories in the one and the parents are like, get that trash magazine out of here, Yeah. Like, did those exist? Were there like horror
EC comics? Well, did you ever see the HBO series Tales from the Crypt?
Yeah, of course.
That's entirely derived from EC Comics. They got the plots from different EC horror comics. EC was the most notorious publisher of horror comics in the 50s. They had Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Horror, and The Haunt of Fear. And some of their stuff was pretty grisly. In fact, there was like a huge anti-comics backlash in the mid-50s, prompted by EC and their competitors who were like trying to outgross everybody, right?
Oh, wow.
And I mean, some of the EC stuff was pretty harsh. They had one story where it was set in the world of minor league baseball, and there was this one guy who was really evil, Herbie Satin, and he was mean and he cheated, and he spiked a guy on this one team, and he had poison on the spikes and killed him. And the team doctor for the other team, did an autopsy on their teammate, realized he'd been poisoned. So the team wanted to get revenge on Herbie. And a year later, they invited him to a ballpark in the middle of the night, ostensibly to get an award, but actually it was so they could kill him. And they dismembered him and played a game of baseball with his body parts, like using his head for the ball. And his leg for the bat and stuff, and even the publisher Bill Gaines and Jack Davis, the artist who drew it, looked at that one and said, "Oh, I wish we hadn't done that."
Oh man, that is ballsy.
That's
for back
amazing.
then.
Oh yeah,
oh god, yeah,
insane.
Well,
wow.
EC had lots of Walking Dead stories. Typically, the plot would be, some guy would get murdered, either offed by his unfaithful wife and her lover or his business partners, and then the corpse would, come back and exact some kind of terrible
lot of revenge, yeah.
Yeah, there was one where these 3 guys were partners in a roadside chicken restaurant where they had roasted and fried chicken. And, the one partner was just this naive, well-meaning guy, and his other partners wanted the business for themselves, so they killed him.
Oh.
And the corpse comes back, of course, and kills both of them. One guy is roasted on the spit. They put the chickens on, and the other guy gets put in the deep fryer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so it was there was always some kind of unity to the revenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like the chicken restaurant, grease fryer, and the spit.
Right.
And that's how it was. Yeah. So it was always unique. That's a lot like Creepshow, just like in the first one.
Sure. Oh yeah, Creepshow was totally inspired by EC Comics.
And that's why I was asking if that was the thing, because it's straight out of, to the T.
I mean, this may shock you.
What?
I never got into comics until much later.
Well, you're into movies
because when I was
more.
a kid, I mean, my parents owned the video store, so I was like, I'll just watch.
You can watch everything, right?
Yeah, oh god, yeah, I watched everything.
And if they owned a comic book store, maybe you'd be more into comics.
Probably.
This is cool. They're letting me watch a video with tits in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But I remember when I was a little kid, I was given comics, but it was Casper and Wendy and
I read that stuff too.
I was like, I'm not into this at all. And I had a lot of Donald Duck comics. And I was like, whatever. And then later on, when I wanted to get into comics, it was one of those things where it was I don't want to go back. Spider-Man's been around for 30 years. I can't get caught up on 30 years of comics. And then it was oh, well, there's this universe and everything. I'm like, I just want the main universe. And I'm like, I can't even
So you were just super overwhelmed?
There was just too much. I think the only comic I read everything of was The Walking Dead. I read issues 1 all the way until it ended. And I read those before the show, like before the show started. I mean, while the show was going, they were still doing the comics, but it was always interesting reading those because it was like they were the show and the comics were the same together, but they would like flip the character deaths.
Oh,
so it'd
you
be
had
like
no idea.
it'd be the same story and plot and scene and like even like the shots in the show were matching panels from the comic, but it was like who was dying in the comics, they would kill somebody different on the show. So it was always like a little different.
Yeah, I like the show a lot.
Yeah,
so
and the comics end way differently. I think it ended. I watched the show until like halfway through, but I think like the comics end way differently too.
Yeah, I haven't watched all of them, but I saw that first and really enjoyed the show a lot. And then when I came upon the comics, honestly, I was astonished that it was so powerful because I thought the art was so lousy. The premise is great. There's good stories, but the art just didn't do anything for me.
Was that the Dark Horse series, the one that came out?
I think it was. I don't know.
Dark Horse comic. The only reason I'm asking is when I worked at Zia, the graphic novels, like I swear it was their peak.
Yeah.
Zia opened up an entire section. They knocked down a wall and bought the place next door to open up a section for the graphic novels.
Yeah, the one on Thunderbird.
Yeah, and I was like,
oh yeah, I know
holy
that one.
crap.
I shop at that store sometimes.
Yeah, I used to work there, and I was like, man, these graphic novels are really blowing up. And it was always Dark Horse, because they're like the biggest name, and it was The Walking Dead. Yeah. Those were so popular, and I was like, wow.
I did read a lot of like Batman graphic novels and stuff. So
some of those were exceptional, but again, I would go to the ones that had artists I liked. And coming up in business in the '80s, I mean, I was friends with guys like Scott Hampton and George Pratt. George did a bunch of great Batman covers. Scott, I think, did one or more Batman graphic novels. I always liked Batman as a character, and when I was reading him as a young kid. Before I became a fan, I mean, I was just reading comic books, for fun. Like, in the summer, you buy a bunch of comics. We'd go on a family trip. Mom would buy me and my brother some comics to read in the car. It was funny. She always bought us DC, never any Marvel. So I grew up reading like Batman, Superman, World's Finest, and like the only Marvel comic I read was Sergeant Fury, because a kid on my block when I lived in Texas, his older brother had like a complete set going back to the first issue.
Wow.
But I didn't really get into Marvel comics, I have to say, until like early 70s. And I was lucky enough, one of my neighbor kids, he had a big stack of comics and he sold them to me, including like early Spider-Mans. I had a copy of Spider-Man #5, granted a beat copy, but it cost me a nickel. Like one of the first FF annuals, the one where Reed and Sue get married and they have like everybody in the Marvel universe in it. It cost me $0.25.
Wow.
You still have them all?
Nah.
No.
No, stupidly, because they had been read, they weren't like in primo condition. I gave them to my buddy Matt when I moved to New York City, and he wound up giving him to some kid he knew.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I wish I'd hung on to him.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, like I mentioned, my parents owned a video store in the 90s, so I had everything. Like, I had everything. And now it's like, that's what it is with VHS tapes now. Like, they're worth hundreds and thousands now for some of them.
Yeah, it's funny. I got rid of all mine.
I had everything, especially horror.
I wish I had hung on to my first generation set of the first 3 Star Wars movies,
Oh, yeah.
Because I got that one Christmas.
Wow.
And, for me now, everything is Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah.
And I like having physical media because I don't trust the streaming services. There could be some movie you absolutely adore and you can't find it.
Yeah.
Right. Or, they want to charge you $10 to watch it.
Yeah.
Or they change things.
I was going to say, what's even worse
Like
is when you watch a movie and then 2 weeks later, you're like, you guys got to see this. I've been talking about it for 2 weeks and now you can't get it. Now you got to pay for it. And it's like, what?
It's like The Burbs. The Burbs is always going on and off streaming services.
Constantly.
And I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, even though I have the Blu-ray, it's easy just to, flip on Netflix and just throw it on real quick.
I do it too, and I'll even watch something I have just because I'm too lazy to go pop the DVD in, and I'll put up with the commercials because it gives me a chance to go to the kitchen and make a sandwich, go down the hall and take a pee or something.
Yeah.
Let me throw out a little hot take here. Let me throw a little something out there.
Okay.
And maybe I'm crazy because we talk about imposter syndrome all the time, right? Now, you are a writer. You are confident that you're a writer. You know that you're a writer. You do it professionally.
Yeah, but the weird thing is, I'm coming off like a months-long period of the worst writer's block I've ever had, I'm finally back to it.
Oh, good.
That's just a digression. Go ahead. Continue that thought.
Actually, because I'm a musician, I love art. I love all that stuff. I wish I could come up with great stories and I can't write lyrics. I'm a music guy. I cannot do words. I like words. I can spell all that stuff. I just can't write. I just can't. And so when I hit those points, I go, how do you get through that writer's block? Because for me, it's I don't have a million ideas. It's I don't even know where to begin. But you don't have that problem. You have a million ideas, and it's
well, if I'm having trouble getting started, sometimes I'll, go have a couple puffs of pot. And that's kind of turning the key on my imagination.
Mm-hmm. Go to valuesesh.com, use code Scaredycast.
Oh, by the way, we're sponsored by a gummy company. They are wonderful. So if you like that. Besides writing comics, you said you like some horror. Do you have favorite horror movies, horror franchises?
I love the classic stuff, the old Universal horror movies. Boris Karloff has been my hero since I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
But Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, Dracula's okay, and I think Bela Lugosi is magnificent. But my problem with that original Dracula movie is it's basically just a filmed play, and all the best stuff. The most amazing stuff happens off screen and it's described by the characters, Dracula turning into a wolf or turning into a bat and flying off, right? In Frankenstein, James Whale was such a good director, he would show you that stuff.
Well, that's what you want to see.
Yeah.
You read books if you leave it to your imagination. I want to see this.
Yeah, and for more modern stuff, I love Hellraiser, the first Hellraiser movie.
Yeah.
I know Clive Barker. I interviewed him, and it's funny. His stuff is bone-chilling. It's horrible. And you meet Clive, and he's just a really lovely, nice Englishman, good manners, friendly, and but I mean his stuff is whoa.
That's what cracks me up. Some people will be I don't trust people that can come up with such sick material. They must be so disgusting, and they have to tap into this dark. And I'm or they could just not be bad people and they're just writing books to entertain people.
Well, exactly.
Why? Well, the fact that they could come up with these ways to torture, it's just disgusting. And I'm and it's lucrative.
Well, it's such a thing as imagination.
Or art, or, expression, good Lord.
The fact that Clive writes all this horrible shit doesn't mean that he's going to go out and start dismembering the neighborhood children.
No kidding. Well, the only thing that I've been able to get certain people that I talk to about this stuff with is I grew up Lutheran. I grew up around a lot of Christianity, and it's pretty strict, but not the worst. But I always tell people, they go to the Passion of the Christ. That was oh my God. That was just so brutal and horrible and everything that Jesus did. And I'm okay, so you can watch that and then it's okay to show that. But the second it doesn't have to do with God anymore, now gore is bad. I knew people that couldn't even watch boxing because it was too violent. But they will sit there and watch Passion of the Christ where they're just brutally torturing this man.
Well, I think Mel Gibson's a good director.
Yeah.
But I have never seen that film because I'm an atheist. I'm not interested in it. And frankly, I don't want to watch some guy getting tortured for 2 hours.
That's my thing.
I hate torture porn. Stuff the Hostel movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing helpless people being tortured.
Well, then I better put art away because this man...
No, that's okay. Art is cool. I like his design.
I love art as a character. I don't necessarily... Everybody tells me, how can you like that? It's just disgusting. And I'm I love him as an actor. He's a great clown. He's entertaining as hell.
It's funny, too, because ever since we started going to more horror conventions and stuff, it's the more grotesque the movies, the nicer the people are.
It's
the
extremes.
most welcoming, nicest, friendliest people you'll ever meet are the people making and acting and starring in all these movies. It's
the
crazy.
worst, crazy.
Well, it's funny. One of my absolute favorite Tippity Top Horror Movies is the original version of Dawn of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I got at San Diego one year, I got to meet Ken Foree, the one who plays the big SWAT cop.
Yeah.
And he was so cool.
Yeah. He was like, him and Tony Todd had a booth at a horror convention. It was the first horror convention I ever went to. And it was here in Arizona, was not marketed at all. So whenever you went into it, all these guys were just standing around at their tables, and there was like maybe 10, 15 fans in there walking around. So it was like,
oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
you got to go. But like him and Tony Todd, like I went straight to them because I loved that Dawn of the Dead so much, and they were like just the coolest, nicest guys.
Yeah. I met Tony Todd at I think at the same convention, and I told him that my day job was I was a teacher. And he was just
Was it the one that is like in North Scottsdale, kind of?
No, this was in San Diego.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because they had a lot of the horror performers there, just, because they have a huge autograph area.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys been to the San Diego Con?
I went to TwitchCon, which I believe was in the same venue, but at a different time.
Okay.
What's the venue for?
I think it's just the San Diego Convention
the San Diego
Center.
Convention Center.
I think that's where TwitchCon was. So I've been at essentially the same thing, but much smaller.
But anyway, I told him I was a teacher, and he was just so encouraging and nice, saying, "Man, that's such an important job." And he was just a sweetheart, like worlds away from like Candyman or any of the other horrible people he's played.
Right? Isn't that funny? And that the humility. Like, I love humble heroes. That's my favorite thing. The second you come out and say, I'm doing it, I don't like you. But for example, I always say, like, Larry Fitzgerald from the Arizona Cardinals. I don't even really watch football that much anymore, but that man does the coolest shit around Arizona. Like, he conducted the entire symphony. He took like a conductor class and learned how to direct like an entire symphony. And I was like, he has no right doing that. Like, he's a football player, but good for him. Like, that's so cool. And he's like obviously rich, but I think it's like he's one of those people that's nice and deserves it. And when you get to meet somebody from their on-screen performance, you're like, oh my God, then you meet them and they're that humble and that cool. It brings them to your level. You don't think of them as celebrities or like superstars. It's like, oh, you're human. And that's so rare.
Like when I met Kevin Eastman for the first time at the Phoenix Comic Con.
Kevin was my boss for 12 years.
Yeah, I was like,
no way.
Did you meet him at that recent appearance?
Oh God, no, this was years ago. It was like maybe 10 years ago or so. But
you rarely meet a nicer guy than Kevin. He is a sweetheart.
I got there, and I went there just for him, but I got there late, and the line was like capped. Like the lady was at the end, like she's like, "Yeah, no, like can't get in line." I'm like, "Is there going to be another signing?" And she's like, "You have to go up and ask his handler." I'm like, "All right." So I like went up to the front line. I'm just standing there, and I was like, "Yeah, is there going to be like another signing or anything?" She's like, "I'm not sure. Like we're ending right now." And he looked at me. He's like, "Did you just want something signed?" I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Here," and he just handed me a comic that was already signed, and I was like, "Oh, dude, thank you," and he's like, "Thank you," and I was like,
and you felt it.
Like, you're welcome, Kevin.
Dude, why is that so? That's amazing. Right? I feel like we really need like to have more of those stories.
Oh
man.
yeah. Kevin is like totally humble, and I mean, sometimes we were drinking buddies at the con. I'd be going out with him and Simon Bisley after the show shuts down, and one time he threw just a terrific party in his hotel room.
Whoa!
And and unfortunately, heavy metal went under when I was still working for it because Kevin's partner was embezzling and just totally ripped him off. And that's why he had to sell the magazine.
Mm.
So it was an because not even because it failed. It's because
his business partner ripped him off.
Son of a bitch!
I didn't even get paid for my last 2 columns because of that scumbag.
Have you watched any horror movies recently? We usually like to.
Yes, I saw The Substance.
Oh, have you seen The Substance yet, Brian?
No.
Brian, if you like a good horror movie, did that one remind you of David Cronenberg?
Yes, very much.
I was watching it. About halfway in the movie, I thought, boy, this reminds me of a Cronenberg movie. But if Cronenberg did it, it would be a lot grosser. Boy, was I wrong.
But then it got great. Yeah, okay, so he has extensively told me and Kelsey and other people, I think, that did Nina watch it?
I've told you. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
All I hear is like, oh, my God, watch.
One of the
my
best horror
favorite-
movies I've ever seen.
It's not just my favorite horror movie of last year. It is my favorite movie, period, of 2024.
Yeah, that lady who directed it did an
Oh my God.
excellent
So
job.
I will probably cover this on the next episode because in my research for some things and stories for Scaredycast, I saw a list that was the top 11, just to be annoying, scariest movies of 2024, and The Substance not even on the list.
That's a crime.
I went right down to the comments. Boom, boom. Where's Substance? Why isn't Substance here? Where's Substance? Why didn't you mention
Did
Substance?
you read a list that was created by somebody who was just trying to do what I did with my Nosferatu review, which was bait people in to get mad in the
pot.
comments.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
You're
yeah.
not trying to make an actual list. You're just trying to get the comments fired up. Like,
Well, not only is The Substance a fine, upsetting horror movie, I have never seen Demi Moore do a better job.
Right?
She was amazing.
Wow.
Margaret Qualley was good too.
did you see it in the theater or at home?
I saw it at home.
Okay, we saw it in the theater. I took my kid,
How old's your kid?
15.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take a little kid there, maybe
Oh
you're
God,
probably
no.
traumatized.
Like I have two kids. One's 11, one's 15, and like they live. It's me. So like I've been showing them Evil Dead and shit when they were way too young to watch it. So like, but we were the only people in the theater. Like it was completely empty. We were the only ones in there. And like I wish it was a packed theater because seeing that movie for the first time in a packed theater would have been
Oh, that would have been
incredible.
great.
And we went in knowing nothing.
I hope
Like,
it made money. I just hope it made money.
Yeah.
Because it's a quality film.
I had a striptease poster on the back of my door in my bedroom, and
Nice.
I turn it around. And whenever I used to make like movies with my friends, the end credits were written on the back of the poster, and like I just moved the camera down the back of the
Nice.
striptease poster. But that reminds me too, is I forgot to do something today. I found the roll of posters from when I was a teenager in my garage, and
Posters. Oh, you mean like your personal
my
poster?
personal
Oh,
posters.
yeah, working with your family owning a video store, man, you must have gotten a lot of movie posters.
You could make a lot of money.
These aren't worth anything anymore.
Oh,
Number one, they're probably not. I mean, there's definitely movie ones in there, but there's like, I think there's like some Jenny McCarthy posters in there. There's probably one from what I remember when I was a kid. I had like Jenny McCarthy. I had a Carmen Electra.
Of course.
I think there's a Korn poster probably in there. But it's like, and the ones I did keep that are probably in there from the video store, like from moving around so much, there's so many like thumbtack holes on the corners. Like they're just
it's
completely
ruined.
But yeah, just if I could go back then, because every Tuesday morning we would go to this warehouse in like South Phoenix. That was where they had all the movies and stuff for video stores. And it was like you'd go in there. The reception desk was right there, and they would always have a stack of screeners, and you could just grab them and take them. And they were like movies that were coming out in like a month or 2 months. So we would always have like, I remember it was like 5th or 6th grade, and I had Encino Man like a month before it came out in video stores. So it was like super cool.
What? That's awesome.
But then like you would go into the warehouse, and it was just a giant, like it was the size of a Walmart now. Like that's how big this place was, and it was just shelves of movies. And I would go like to the wrestling section. I grab like a WWF tape. My mom, she would be getting like all the new releases for that day because movies came out every Tuesday. And then in the corner were all the posters, and you could just grab whatever the hell you
theater
wanted.
promo posters.
Just big, huge posters for the store. They had the standees there, like those big
card
cardboard
cutouts.
things. Oh my god! And like, just like, and they had the store from 1990 to 99, I think. So it was like all through the
Prime.
90s.
Just
like,
perfect,
Oh my god!
yeah.
Just all the things that I could have kept from back then that would just like.
well,
One year at the Phoenix Con, I forget when it was, but they laid out a couple long tables with all these like Star Trek and movie posters.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
you could just go and help yourself.
Yep.
wow.
Yeah, I got the one from the original one from when NBC was first airing it. It was James Bama doing the Enterprise crew, and I still have that one.
Damn. Wow. I wish like I could just go back and just be like, hey man, grab one for your room, but then grab another one just to put away.
Oh,
like
I've got many stories like that myself.
I bet.
Well, I mean,
the only thing I still have from my parents' video store, other than maybe in that roll of posters, is I have 2 things. I have a clock from Another 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte.
And Nick Nolte? Oh my
It's a clock.
God.
It's like this. It's like a turquoise and pink clock. And then I have a radio, and it's like a big full-size old-time radio from The Shadow
Oh man, that is a good score.
Wow.
It doesn't like it looks just like an old time radio. It doesn't have like any branding on it anywhere, like the shadow or anything anywhere on it. It just looks
Does
like
it
an old.
work?
I don't know. It probably still does because we never really used it. And like it's just.
Hey,
Well, plug it in and give
that
it,
could be
give it
yeah.
a try.
That could be a cool item.
But yeah, like
it's so
just
random.
like just thinking back of like all the things. Like I used to have a Van Damme hockey jersey from the movie Sudden Death that I'd wear rollerblading around my neighborhood. I had like a Waterworld watch. Like I just
all
had
these things would be so.
Oh god, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I just had so many just random weird movie promo items that like studios would send video stores. Like
that you took for like granted because you're
yeah,
like,
I was
whatever.
just like, oh, this is just junk now.
Yeah.
Like I'll just go sell this and go buy myself some video games and toys and shit.
yeah,
But like
that's like you and your game worn Shaq shorts. You just sit around and fart in them all day. And I'm just like, damn, dude. Those
how
are
do you know what I was doing last
those
night?
are Shaq like game worn Suns like gym shorts, and you're like, brap.
That's exactly what was happening last night. Like you hit the nail right on the head, man. But like, just like when they were closing the store, they were just like, just go grab what you want because they were going to do a big sale and sell everything. So I just grabbed every horror movie, had the the boxes with them. I grabbed all the video games, so I had like Nintendo and Super Nintendo games with the boxes and the instructions and all that.
What happened to all of it?
I just, I was like 18, so I just sold them all so I could get money to go out with my friends. I would just go take them to like, there was a store on 59th and Bell called Thrifty Joe's.
I remember the name.
And I used to go there and I would just sell like once a week, I would just sell a bunch of shit and just go spend it on
Like go to the mall.
Go to the mall, like and like now that I think I'm like, God, dude, if I just held on to all that stuff nowadays, oh my God,
Famous last words.
I'd have the
Right,
cool, yeah,
right.
like I'd have the coolest room.
Like I was telling you guys, I had like a run of like early Spider-Mans with Steve Ditko. Going up to I think about issue 32. So I think he stopped doing Spider-Man around issue 33 or so, and like the later issues were in pretty good shape. I mean, like I said, the copy I had of Spider-Man #5 was pretty beat, but I loved it.
Did you have almost the whole series too?
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
I had I just picked out like what I wanted. Like I had some Fantastic Four annuals, those Spider-Mans, and I forget what all else. Which I don't have any of that stuff now. My collection is totally different.
Sure.
There was like that with VHS tapes too. Like some box cover art was just like, I remember one specific. I never watched the movie when it was. I mean, I've seen it since when it came out on streaming. But there was a movie called Demon Wind, and the VHS cover had one of those like things on the front to where like if you just moved it a little bit, it changed.
Like
so,
Jack Frost.
Lenticulated plastic.
So whatever you like moved it, like the demon was coming through the window on the cover. It was so cool.
Well, I remember one. There was a like ultra cheesy, cheap horror movie called Frankenhooker.
Oh,
God,
we
yeah,
love
we love
Frankenhooker.
Frankenhooker.
The original box.
Yeah.
Okay. It was like 3D, and if you pressed on it, there was a sound chip, and she'd go, "Hi, honey, want a date?" You remember that?
I don't. We didn't have Frankenhooker at my parents' video store. That was what we didn't have.
Cool.
But
I've never seen it, but I played with the box.
Oh God, yeah, I love Frankenhooker. We rented that one night because we didn't like at my parents' store. We didn't have too many of like those weird deep cut. Like we didn't have trauma movies or anything like that there. We just had like Halloween and Friday the 13th and stuff.
The more mainstream things.
Yeah. But like when I went to work at a place called Video Power Store, that's where they had like Flesh Eating Mothers and Nail Gun Massacre and Frankenhooker and like Killer Nerd.
Did you ever see the Toolbox Murders
Yep.
with Cameron Mitchell? Okay.
I think that was one too where it was like, it wasn't a normal VHS box. It was like a bigger box.
Yeah.
Like I remember the
Like
original.
with the click.
No, it didn't have
the
a click. It was
click-in
just a bigger box.
Oh, weird.
That's the clamshell.
That's
ones.
what I'm
It
thinking
wasn't
of.
one of those. It was just like a bigger box.
Not the double stack with the multiple
No.
tapes, but just a bit.
It was just like a bigger box.
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
like.
And I think that was just, so it would pop out on the shelf.
Yeah, but it was like if it was a horror movie and it had those bigger boxes, like you knew it was going to be like some fucked up shit. Like I remember the original I Spit on Your Grave had one of the bigger boxes too.
Yep, that's definitely one of the. Still,
The reason I brought up the Toolbox Murders is I dated one of the actresses in that when I lived in New York.
whoa.
Yeah. She was, she did a few mainstream things, but she was better known as Kelly Nichols, the porn star.
You dated a porn star.
I swear.
That's so
I'm
sick.
not making it up. Believe it or not, boys, when I was young, I was good looking. Not
Hey,
like now.
what are you talking? You look better.
Hey,
You're in
welcome
better
to the
shape.
club, man.
You're in better shape than both of us.
Oh,
so
please.
I don't even want to. Now, you said you've lived in New York. You lived in L.A.
No, I never lived in L.A.
Oh, okay.
I visited there. I have a bunch of friends there. But I lived in New York City for about 9 years, lived 2 years in upstate New York. I went to grad school at SUNY at New Paltz. Then we moved. I was married at the time. We moved to Tucson because my family was still there, and I wanted to raise my daughter in Arizona rather than back east because I knew, raising a kid is expensive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I lived in New York. That's where I tried to break into the comic book business. I had some success, but just not enough to sustain a career. And so, sometimes I'd be stuck doing like odd jobs. Like I was a furniture mover for 3 years. And it was while I was doing that, I met this guy who sometimes on the weekends was a production assistant for adult films.
Whoa.
And so I asked him to introduce me to, the people, got some work, and I did that off and on for like 3 years.
Huh.
And that's where I've got a story with a little supernatural.
There we go. Let's hear it.
Tinge to it.
A
Okay.
supernatural porn set story?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is
Okay.
the perfect place for
This is Scaredycast right here.
Welcome
okay.
to Scaredycast,
Perfect.
everybody. We're here to
Okay.
talk
Well,
about...
don't get too excited. But sometimes, in the quest for, keeping everything from being too set bound and using the same locations, the producer I worked with rented a house, like a farmhouse, in upstate New York. Maybe like an hour or two north of Manhattan. And so, we trooped out there, and loaded our equipment. And I found out subsequently that the house where they were shooting it had been owned by a now deceased New York policeman who was notorious for his brutality. Ooh. And anyway, while we were setting up to get started to make the film, I went with the electricians down into the basement, and as we were looking for the fuse box so we could tap into it, run the lights and everything. And while I was walking through the basement, I walked through a cold spot. Oh, you guys know that?
Oh yes.
Yep.
Okay, and there was no way it could have been a draft or anything. It was just like this cylindrical shaft of icy cold air.
Like physical, you can feel. Like
Yeah.
you physically walk through it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that was kind of creepy. And then later that weekend, because we spent like a weekend at this place, the makeup artist was laying out all her stuff, and she was in an upstairs bedroom in the house, and she said a big mirror just like popped off the wall and shattered.
Just sitting there and then just doink.
As if the house was saying, "Get the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
But other than that, those are the weirdest things that happened. The rest of it, we just proceeded business as usual, and I didn't see any visual manifestations or any like poltergeist activity or anything like that. But yeah, that's so we shot a porno movie in a haunted house.
Fuck, that's so cool,
That's what we should do.
dude.
Forget these
You've done
ghost
everything.
hunting.
You've written for multiple huge comic conglomerates. You were literally a porn star. You've literally
No. I was not a
No,
porn. I
that's
was
how
not
we're
in front of the
remembering it. That's how we're remembering it.
I
That's how
was
we
not in
remember
front
it.
of the camera. I was a production
Right.
assistant. I
You
helped.
was
I
a
helped
porn star.
No, I helped the gaffers and the.
What was it called? The Orgasmo is like stunt cock.
Stunt cut. Yeah, it was just they just used it.
Well,
for filming.
sometimes that's a real thing because sometimes the leading man would be like so coked up he couldn't get it up, and they'd have to shoot the money shot with maybe the cinematographer would have one of the girls give him head, and then they'd intercut that so they could
Dude, let's just all start a podcast from his stories and everything. Dude, we could just have he could have his own. Let's
Yeah.
call it Stevecast.
Okay.
Well, you could bring my brother in. He's got some great stories too. In fact, one time when I was making one of these movies, Paul, my brother, was out for a visit, and my producer said, "Quick, you got to rent a car." Now I'm like flat ass broke, and so Paul shows up and I say, "Hey, Paul, do you have a credit card?" So we got my brother to rent the car, and he came up and helped us make the movie that weekend.
Wow.
And he always tells people, Steve has the most interesting friends.
Came up and helped make the movie.
He was doing stuff like moving lights and cameras.
Okay.
We were not on-screen talent.
Man. That's just what his lawyer makes him say.
No. Guys, my life is an open book. If I'd ever done that, I'd tell you.
It's not too late.
Never too late.
Never too late.
I considered it at one point, especially when I was dating Kelly Nichols.
I mean, yeah.
I said, she said, you've had a look at the equipment. Do you think I'm qualified? She said, oh yeah.
Hey, there we go.
I mean, I was no Johnny Wad, but
hey, what did we say? There's still time.
There's still time.
There's still time.
Oh, and on a couple of shoots, I worked with the infamous Ron Jeremy.
No kidding.
And Ron. So hairy. I mean, you're talking back hair you could like weave a rug from. Just everything. He was so hairy the girls called him the Hedgehog.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And Ron may have like made a lot of films and gotten laid a lot, but he was a fairly awful human being. He was not fun to be around.
That's why he's in jail now.
No,
kidding?
Is he still in jail?
No, they let him go because he has dementia.
Oh, well. That's why he was in jail.
He was in jail, but then they judged that he wasn't competent to like serve out a sentence.
And he's in Ghostbusters.
What?
That's true.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He's just an extra, but like nobody knew because he was like on the side of a shot that whenever Ghostbusters came out, it's formatted, for like it's a square. Yeah. So when it came out on like DVD and it was a widescreen version, then he was finally in it. Yeah.
Yeah. An editor I worked with. For this book packaging company. He's in Ghostbusters too. He's like one of that group of rabbis. They're calling in all the different denominations to help with, and he's in that group of rabbis. With like the black flat hat and the big beard.
Yarmulke,
the black clothes.
The Orthodox. Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, tell everybody where they can find you. Are you online? Do you have socials?
I don't have.
If people have questions,
a website. I was on. This is a sad story. I was on Facebook, but I got kicked off because some piece of shit hijacked my page and then used it to start flogging Bitcoin to people.
Oh,
and
no.
The Facebook AI bots said that no, you violated our policies. So I'm banned from Facebook and Instagram for something that's not my fault.
You didn't.
But I'm on Blue Sky. My handle is Ringo.
That's it? Just Ringo?
Yeah, Ringo
cool
at
as hell.
Blue Sky, blah blah blah. But anyway, because my last name is Ringenberg.
How'd you snag Ringo? Did you get in there early?
I just because
Ringo?
Ringo, like Ringo Starr. But actually, I'm not trying to be a rock star. I'm more like Johnny Ringo, the old gunslinger.
There you go.
The guy who got the drilled in the head in Tombstone.
Oh yeah.
Johnny Ringo was a real guy.
That's what I thought so. Yeah.
Yeah. And, a lot of that stuff in Tombstone actually happened. Like Wyatt Earp, going across a stream in the middle of a gun battle, killing Curly Bill Brocious with a shotgun. Wyatt Earp really did that. He was a mean motherfucker.
Dude, and history? My God. What's your favorite time period?
I'd like to go back to the 1930s in New York City so I could go to the Cotton Club and see Cab Calloway, listen to Orson Welles on the radio doing The Shadow, and go out and grab a whole bunch of mint condition copies of Action Comics #1.
Hey, there you go. In the 30s?
Yeah.
Wow.
I just, I look around now and I think people just dress so schlubby. Back in the 30s, if a man went out, he was wearing a suit, maybe a 3-piece suit, a hat, shine shoes. I mean, nowadays, you go to the supermarket, there's people walking around in their fuzzy slippers and jammy bottoms.
Yeah.
And I think, come on, have a little bit of pride.
Yeah. I mean, some people, I don't know. I can't. I have been known to traverse the streets in pajama pants sometimes. I've done that before.
But Brian, You know, I just I love a lot of the pop culture. I know the politics of the 30s, you know, had some really ugly stuff in it. But I love the music, the style, the films, you know, comic books, pulp magazines. You know, I feel like I was born in the wrong decade.
Wow. Do you think
That's how I feel too.
Yeah, well, I think we all do. My dad grew up, he was born in 1950. So he showed me all the old music and all the old stuff. And then I was like, wait, yeah, this stuff's better than it is now. Like, what? That's weird.
Well, I know, you know, you'd be hard-pressed, at least I would be, to find, like, musical artists that I find interesting. I mean, you know, I like Billie Eilish. I think Taylor Swift is very talented. Her music's not really my cup of tea, but I think she's very good. But, you know, I mean, I feel like I grew up when the pop music was the best. The 60s and 70s. You know, we had the Rolling Stones, and then I was around when punk came in. I loved the Sex Pistols, the Ramones. Saw them like 3 times when I lived back east.
Oh my God! Did you really in New York too?
Yeah, yeah. You know what I'd love is to have the bread to do an album, which is the Mormon Tabernacle Choir sings the Ramones. Can you imagine that the whole group singing "Now I Want to Sniff Some Glue"?
We'll say the Ramormon Tabernacle Choir.
Yeah.
The Ramormons.
Yeah, but you know, stuff like that was edgy.
Yeah, attitude. It had
attitude.
Well, that's what art is. It's passion, it's art, it's emotion, it's feeling. And you know what? That's why I feel like it's just kind of all become like gray now. It's like nothing stands out.
Well, everything is bland. It's so bland and corporate.
Yeah.
The best art, the best music now is stuff people make on their own. You know, outside of the corporate sphere, I think.
I agree, and I think it's criminally appreciated, underfound, under all of that. It's just like,
Well, yeah, I mean, look at the movies. You know, the endless stream of remakes and movies based on video games and, you know.
Original ideas are kind of,
Well, but, you know, the thing is there are so many great novels, so many great short stories that, I mean, you could make like a new science fiction movie every couple of months and never run out of material. You know, from writers like Robert Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke, William Gibson, the guy who did Neuromancer. If you like science fiction at all, definitely read that book. Do you know that one, Brian?
I'm not a huge. The only science fiction I've got into was like Ray Bradbury stuff. Like,
I was huge into him when I was a teenager.
That's like, that's when and then 1984 and kind of into that stuff. The sciencey stuff, I don't know. It's cool. I'm not like. It's definitely neat. I'm not the biggest science fiction fan, mostly because when you get into time travels and multiverses, I'm just like, I think it's lazy writing most of the time.
Well, sometimes, though, you can do a really good story with time travel. Heinlein did one called The Door into Summer, which was a time travel story about technology and revenge.
Huh.
And that one I think would make a terrific film.
Yeah, well, that's why I wish they would do something like The Illustrated Man, which I think it's because
they did do a movie, The Illustrated Man, back in 1968, but they only had 3 of the stories in it.
Oh, well, that's...
But, I mean, look it up. You can probably still find it.
I mean, I would
and
still...
it was okay, but it didn't really have that Bradbury feel.
And could you imagine that, like, with, like, a big budget, like, that dystopian, incredible science fiction worlds that they could make now? Like, I wish people would just... make that. People with the money and the cameras need to make the good stories. Don't remake something that's been done 100 times.
Yeah, well, did you see The Sound of Thunder? That's from a very famous Bradbury story. And whoever made it totally mucked it up. I mean, that movie's lousy. And the original story has a very cool, very shocking ending where, you know, stepping on a butterfly has consequences. Because it's about a company that lets you go back in time to hunt T-Rex. But you're not, you know, they have like an anti-gravity path. And the only animals you're allowed to kill are ones that are like, you know, fated to die anyway. Because they send an advance team back to, say, okay, this T-Rex, you know, is going to like go in this swamp and drown. He'll never procreate. So it's okay to shoot him.
What?
And one of the hunters panics when he sees the T-Rex, steps off the path, he kills a butterfly, and then when they go back to their present, it's totally changed.
Oh, I love that stuff.
Yeah, I love Bradbury. And EC Comics adapted a bunch of his stuff.
Really?
Really good, intelligent adaptations.
Yeah, well, and especially because there's a lot of dark connotation. Like, it's not happy science fiction usually. It's not very like bright and fun. It's like kind of more human and real and
like
visceral,
something wicked this way comes.
Yeah.
Is scary. It's dark.
Yeah, it is.
It's like looking at bad people from a child's perspective.
Yeah. Oh wow. Man, sorry, we're just nerding out over here about sci-fi.
Oh yeah, what was cool for me? Okay, I started going to the San Diego Con in 1972, long time ago. But that was like the best California con, and Bradbury was a regular every year.
Wow.
So I remember sitting in one of the ballrooms listening to Bradbury read poetry. He read this long epic poetry about poem about Moby Dick and just like a million things like folded into it. Wow. And that was just so cool.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming down today.
Yeah,
Thanks for being on Scaredycast and giving us a lot of information that we usually don't necessarily talk about, but really interesting things. And if you're a fan of books and comics, you have a bunch of websites and things to check out. So get on it, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And I urge all of you listening to this, don't just watch TV or play video games. Read a fucking book once in a while.
It helps.
There you go.
Some of y'all really need to. Too.
And finish the video before you post comments.
Yeah, thanks, Bryce.